it's nice to be able to listen to what Lindsay was talking about there. That's some pretty in-depth topics that take years to explain sometimes. I'm going to more so speak about kind of the process in Manitoba when it comes to from tile drainage, moving over to getting water into municipal waterways, the process that we use in Manitoba to kind of start your project to finish your project all through there. I'm going to speak to Lidar, what it is, how it's being used, how we're using it in Manitoba, and then just kind of briefly talking on networking and partnerships. So I will try and get this up. Hopefully the technology works for us today, for me today. But let's try. Hopefully this comes up. Get up there. Is everybody able to see the screen? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So like I mentioned, I essentially solve problems is what I do. It's a bit of a mouthful. I know the introduction there is kind of lengthy, but I solve problems with drainage. I work with producers, I work with municipalities, I work with permitting officers and watersheds. I do it from a grassroots base, so I'm the one out there actually doing surveying, working with CAOs, stuff like that. So primarily what my days spent doing is working with municipalities. In the summer, I survey 12 hours a day, 7 months of the year, looking after drainage for producers and municipalities. So like as mentioned, I do have my own, run my own company and work with Northern Plains Drainage, which some of you may be familiar with Northern Plains Drainage out that way. We have done some work in the past, and they also are, they also own Ditch Assist, which many of you may use. Yeah. So a question that I ask, or I kind of bring up to everybody, and it seems like a simple question, is everybody can agree that water doesn't go uphill. And I cannot count how many times I have been asked to get water uphill, or having somebody tell me that water goes south and the next person standing at the same location says it goes north. Quite often in those situations, you need data. It can't be on perspective. Water can flow uphill if the downstream is flooding. Once it gets over that hump, sure, it can flow the opposite way, but it could be 5-6 feet deep at the other end. So I always bring this up because this isn't necessarily as easy as a question as most people think. I'm sure most producers can appreciate that. And then this is kind of an example of such. This was a job I surveyed this fall for a developer on the south side of Lake Winnipeg. He developed cabin areas, is currently selling them off. He did his own drainage, and the drainage actually works backwards. So the lake actually floods back into the development. Get this out of the way here. That up there. You can kind of see how I'm standing in one location and water is flowing into this culvert. That's actually supposed to be flowing towards me in the end, and it doesn't. So drainage isn't as simple as everybody tends to think it is. So as Lindsay talked, one size doesn't fit all. Sometimes you need some education behind it. A lot of time and money is spent on drainage. Once again, I'm sure everybody in this room can appreciate that. That seems to be endless amounts of time spent on trying to get drainage. Quite often, I find, in my experience, nothing ever happens of it. most cases, water will find the easiest way to route to take. And most times it really doesn't take that much to get water to flow if we're talking surface drainage. So ditches through your field might be a little bit different in Saskatchewan, because I know there is a lot of pockets that can be very deceiving, maybe only 20 feet wide, but they could be 100 feet deep. Those pockets definitely cause some challenges in Saskatchewan that we don't always have in Manitoba here, especially central Manitoba. But in most cases, it doesn't take a whole lot of dirt at times to get water flowing. So that is always kind of what we try and accomplish. Little dirt is possible move to accomplish the goal. So in other cases, reasons drainage doesn't seem to progress is a lot of government department. We've got government departments, we've got municipalities, we've got industries and general public are all working on the same goal or issue, but are rarely working together. And that stands very true in Manitoba at times, because we've got many people working on an issue, very often not working together, and unaware that each other are actually working on this particular problem. So that is an issue that we face over here. I'm not too sure if that sounds familiar in your neck of the woods, but I'll go out on a limb and say it's probably happening over there. So I'll just kind of go over how the drainage process in Manitoba works. From I'll feed off of Lindsay a little bit. Say you have a tile drainage or surface drainage project you want to get going. In Manitoba, any land that's drained is regulated by the Water Rights Act of Manitoba. And that pretty much states what we can and can't do. And it can be lengthy and it can be tricky. There is definitely some hurdles to get through in doing that. So the province of Manitoba kind of split the whole province up into regions for permitting officers. So we have, I think, almost a dozen permitting officers, which look after all drainage applications. And that could be, say, a municipality is looking to do ditch work. They would interact with the permitting officer just as much as a producer with tile drainage. So every drainage project would have to go through the provincial licensing. There are two avenues to that. So one thing I know in Saskatchewan, this does look quite a bit different. We have something called a registrable project, which would include anything. So it include tile drainage in most cases, or anything that's less than 12 inches of cut. So if you're just maintaining your field drains, it would be a registrable project. Quite often, less hoops to go through, less downlander forms to fill out and stuff like that. It's deemed to have less of an impact. We also have licensable projects, which would be anything dug 12 inches or more past natural prairie. So that'd be your municipal ditches. If you're digging kind of more of a trench style ditch system through your field, that would apply here. Also, something that's changed, it's not in the legislation yet, but the permitting officers have kind of banded together, is we were for a while using land leveling as a technique to kind of bypass a few of the hurdles for downstream landowners, because we were able to, still to an extent, fill in potholes that aren't wetlands to slope fields to get better drainage, but we were not needing to necessarily get downlander approval because you're working on your land. You're not really directing water anywhere. So that was a registrable project, which was less money. Now it's deemed a licensable. The province has deemed that if you need a license to dig 12 inches deep, you should need a license to fill in 12 inches of a hole. So that's changed a little bit over here. So just sticking with how kind of drainage process works here again, every time you need a survey. So that could be via Lidar. We use Lidar quite a bit to come up with drainage maps throughout the province. It could be RTK going out there and surveying, or it could be, I've seen old history topography maps from engineers used. Establishing your plan. So whether it's surface drainage, land leveling, tiling, municipal ditch cleanouts, you need to come up with your plan. Producers in a lot of cases actually do need to not only apply to the province, but they also need to apply to their municipalities as well, which have their own, in some cases have their own applications. That's a little bit rare in Manitoba, but it seems to be getting more complicated as we go. Once drainage maps and profiles completed and all downlanders have been signed off. So that is one thing that I think is pretty consistent between Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we do have to get downstream landowner signatures for many projects. There has been a number of cases in the last couple of years. It kind of flip-flopped. We used to be able to get conditional approvals from the province before applying for municipal applications. That caused some confusion where municipalities thought that the province was going to deny a project, but it was already approved. But now we've kind of flip-flopped the other way, where you need all downlander approvals if they are affected to be signed off before we can get the provincial sign off. And there is some wiggle room there if say a neighbor doesn't want to sign off and it has nothing to do with your project. It's just simply neighbors not liking each other. So I'm sure everybody here is kind of aware of different maps, but this is pretty much to the left is pretty much where I specialize, is land leveling. So that'd be a cut fill map. This would be a part of your application. Surface drainage or surface ditch maps would also be part of that as well, and then your tile maps. So kind of moving over to municipality profiles. So this is really where we specialize. This is our bread and butter. Northern Plains has pretty much standardized this process in Manitoba for municipalities. This is the go-to profile from corner to corner, from southeast US border to as far north and all the way to Saskatchewan. This is the profile we use for municipalities. I don't know if many people would have seen a profile like this, but if we were to come in and survey for your local municipality, say you have tile drainage that's outletting into a ditch, municipal right away, and your ditch needs cleaned out, this is what we would come up with. We'd come survey that municipal ditch, we'd do the prairie, ditch bottom, and road, and take that data and come up with these profiles. A little hard to see. I do apologize. They don't transition over well, but we're able to come up with cut lines that municipalities are able to use to dig the ditches. And that includes resetting culverts, putting in new culverts, anything that needs to be done to accomplish the task. So this is pretty much the standard in Manitoba that we use, and there are no engineers with this. This is us coming in, surveying, doing the profiles, working with the foremans or drainage managers, whatever they're titled as. Municipalities decide what they want to cut. This document would go with their application to the province. The permitting officer would go to the site, take a look at it, review the profile. If everything seems relatively accomplishable and they really don't have any concerns, the project is okay. Very few times do we run into having to engineer anything. There is times where in some municipalities in Up in the interlake and stuff like that, where you're dealing with a lot of stone, you have to blast out the stone to get a ditch. Sometimes there's engineers, and then the province tends to like to use engineers for their waterways. Is there any questions about kind of the process that we go through? No? Okay. How many people in the room have used Lidar before? Anybody seen uses for Lidar? No? Okay. So the easiest way to explain Lidar, or how it is or what it is, essentially it's light detection and ranging. And what it does, at least in Manitoba here and across Western Canada, is it's a laser system mounted on a fixed wing aircraft that flies quite high. You'll likely never see it. And they're scanning the topography. So they come in and they will do their flybys, continuously scanning the topography of land. So most of southern Manitoba has Lidar. So we are actually able to utilize that information almost across the entire province, south of the lakes, I guess. There is some up in Swan River. The valley's done, so that's available up there as well. So once again, kind of what it's used for is large scale topography. Oh, can't say it today. Surveying, so large scale surveying. If we're looking at an RM or a large watershed, you can actually pull data for that entire region, which would take obviously years to get if you're on quads trying to accomplish that. Flood prevention purposes, the province of Manitoba uses this a lot for the Red River Valley. We've actually modeled for some RMs. If the river goes up by X amount of centimeters or feet, we can actually tell the RMs which towns or which houses would be flooded or would be affected. So we do have a couple RMs running that right now that tend to flood each year, and they use it to notify their ratepayers of possible issues. Lidar is also getting used for communities to scan assets. You're able to really pick up a lot of information. Scanning buildings and refineries. So they've actually used Lidar to scan, I don't know if it's Imperial Oil, but some of the big refineries, and then digitize it so that when there's a problem, the maintenance team simply scans that piece of equipment and it's just put into production. And once again, just engineering. So once again, Lidar kind of allows individuals the ability to look at the big picture of drainage. Many times we're looking at affected area and not the overall watershed or region. Due to looking at drainage through a small lens, which quite often happens, we miss key information. This stands just as true for engineers as it does anybody else. I've been a part of many projects, and we've collected a lot of information for engineers. And the one thing that we've learned, or I've learned, is they only see the data you provide them, just like anybody else. So if you're not necessarily out there seeing the area, experiencing all that, you're only dealing with the data you have. So sometimes that's not a good thing. Sometimes you need to take a bigger picture at that. Lidar allows you to do that. And I do have some slides here that I'll be able to show you exactly what we're up to. So this slide, I'm going to sit on here for a minute. Does anybody have a guess at what that is? The whites, the blues, the dark blues? Anybody have a guess? So this is one municipality. So what this is this is all the natural drainage runs inside of this municipality. It is 50 million points of Lidar data. So when we look at what does Lidar help us do, we would never be able to accomplish figuring out how water flows through this municipality, doing this via RTK. So this is a zoomed out picture of it, as I do have a couple more slides that zoom in. This is all built on Lidar. So this is one of our clients. This is actually pulled from a portal that we built through a municipality that is free to ratepayers. So any producers in the room today would be able to go to this website via the RM, and you'd be able to see how drainage flows through the RM. So this is a zoomed in picture of that same RM. I've got another zoomed in for quarter sections, but how do you even start to figure this out if you don't have this information in front of you? And Lidar allows us the ability to pull this information and utilize it. So right down to the quarter section. So this would be a producer's field. This would be at the time of Lidar being shot, this would be how his field drains today, for the most part. And through this RM, you can go and take a look at any quarter section in the RM. So another map that we utilize Lidar in is it's kind of called hill shading. So it's the same RM, just a different processing technique, and we're actually able to see. Hopefully everybody can kind of see my mouse here. Same RM. This is coming off the Ridey Mountain Park, and you can kind of see here the blue will be a low spot. That's just marsh in here. Your white in here is actually a ridge. Your red over here is your highest point in your municipality, and you can actually see through the RM or the municipality how water comes down. It's coming south. The lake is right here. It could just go at the top here, run over, but it actually comes south through a valley system that you can't see from the naked eye. It comes through this valley system south all the way down below the lake, and then actually heads north again. Lidar is able to show us that, and it's not somebody through history's past sharing that knowledge. This is 50 million points of data telling us that this is how water is going to flow through your municipality or your region. So looking at the big picture, being able to zoom in. This would be that zoomed in again. So this actually highlights to show the resolution of Lidar is absolutely incredible. If we see right up in here on to the bottom right, we can see a bunch of different lines coming across these fields. That is actually old fence lines from when they had paddocks, from when they're running cattle in these areas. These are not seen by the naked eye. Not necessarily how it's farmed today, but when we look at drainage issues, this information becomes pretty key. This is also a river system that comes through this particular area as well, and then kind of cast off streams as well. So very powerful stuff. If I zoomed in, continue to zoom in, we can even get it to the point where we click on certain areas and it'll tell us the elevation. To keep in mind the resolution, so I've been talking about how many shots this is. In many cases, we have 2 meter by 2 meter blocks. Every 2 meters by 2 meters, there's a survey shot from the Lidar. So there's a lot of information there. Probably one of the most powerful things we've been able to do with Lidar is essentially build a portal map that producers are able to actually go and download their elevation data for their fields. Because we went through the municipality for this, they covered the cost of it. And to this particular municipality, all of the elevation data for every quarter section inside of their boundaries is free to download. So as a producer, you can go pick the field you want. You can, actually, I think I got it here. Here we go. Here it is right here. You're able to go in there, follow the steps, go into your quarter section, and within about 30 seconds, you've got 2 meter by, actually this one's a little bit more. I think this one's 7 meter by 7 meter. Lidar elevation data that you can go ahead and build your drainage maps off of. So you don't necessarily have to go and spend a lot of money to get drainage maps. You can actually do it yourself. So this is pretty powerful. We've got 4 municipalities in Manitoba using this portal, and it's gone over very well. The data is there, so why not use it? It's just a matter of processing it in a format that's easily accessible. That's all. So how did Manitoba get LiDAR? So Manitoba has had LiDAR available for a number of years now, 10 plus. There's some old data sets in there. At that time, most of the LiDAR information was kind of commissioned by the province. So they flew most of the rivers to figure out what flooding would look like. So they are quite old, and they're not terribly accurate, those data sets, because the province just wanted to see if the river rose X amount of feet, who would be affected. They just wanted a general idea. Since then, there have been a number of projects through watersheds. So the watersheds in Manitoba have gotten into this quite a bit, where they will commission LiDAR for their region. So they'll get the guys to come in, fly it, to look at the entire watershed. Municipalities are also looking at this as well. And because the province of Manitoba has done this, part of their mandate or in legislation, it is actually written that it has to be available to the general public, and it has to be free. So that doesn't mean that it's necessarily easy to use or in a file that anybody can just use, but it is there. And generally, once you get a GIS specialist working on it, they can turn it into a pile of different things. But it is there, and it is available. Like I said, it does cover most of southern Manitoba. Once again, watershed districts are using it, municipalities, the province of Manitoba, tile installers. So tile installers in Manitoba won't actually go out in many cases and survey your field initially. They will pull the LiDAR data, come up with a plan, utilize that because it's much faster. They can do it over the winter. Come up with a plan, and then they'll send their guys out there to confirm that everything is good come spring or a month before the project starts. Drainage contractors like ourselves, we use LiDAR every day. It really does help out a lot. Engineers and then producers as well. So one thing that always plagues everybody, and I mentioned it a little bit before, was having information in one place. So as I can always appreciate where producers are coming from, you're being asked to follow a system that is an imperfect system and utilize information that is scattered across the countryside. So LiDAR is definitely an important tool to understanding what you're dealing with on the ground in many different places, but it's also important to have kind of one organization or one group that's able to kind of bring everything together. And what we're utilizing in Manitoba here is quite often that's municipalities. Ratepayers are paying taxes. They want to see action come out of that. Municipalities are kind of that good partner to be able to offer those services back to ratepayers. As we kind of went over, what we've utilized it for is drainage flow routes, elevation and topography, and LiDAR bare earth elevation data maps is kind of what we utilized it for and offered that back into municipalities in hopes that it helps producers accomplish their goal. As well as kind of speaking, I'd like to speak to the importance of networking. at the end of the day, drainage knows no boundaries. Water is going to go where water wants to go. So if one we'll pick on municipalities for a minute, but say water is coming through one municipality and into the next. It's not just that easy to stop it. And in most cases, water is going to find some other alternative, and it's going to be the easiest point of resistance to get there. So it is very important to have everybody come to the table, but do that in good faith. Because to have effective drainage, you can only do that if everybody's kind of on the same page, and everybody's willing to work together for the same goal. Everybody wants to see producers succeed. Everybody wants to have effective drainage. Effective drainage doesn't necessarily mean, as Lindsay pointed out, having water completely dissipate, because in Manitoba, we went from an extreme drought to having too much water in the same year. So we had no water, and a small city almost ran out of drinking water, to they've never had so much water before. So effective drainage could be water retention. It could be closed circuit tile drainage plans, which are becoming very popular in Manitoba. So tile drainage going into a pond, using that pond water to actually potentially irrigate your crops again. So it's a closed circuit. There's no municipality drainage ways put in place. There's no downstream landowners affected. It is a closed circuit system. Also, creating a standard in which drainage can be accomplished is key. If we're asking people to go through hurdles to get their job or get their projects accomplished, we should probably make it as transparent, easy, and accessible as possible. That is definitely something we do struggle in Manitoba in some areas. Not everybody has all the information they need, which makes the process very difficult, which just leads to anger. And once again, networking partnering are also, as I keep mentioning, something Manitoba struggles with my hopes of it becoming smoother as drainage becomes more important. And the biggest lesson that I've learned in drainage is having the right people in the right place. That is key to everything. Is simply just having the right people, the right place, kind of at the right time, to make sure that policies are written correctly from a place of knowledge, being able to balance out producers' needs, public needs, such like that. So kind of what's next? I would encourage all of you as producers to kind of talk to your municipality or municipal councilors. That works well in Manitoba here. I do work with a couple producer-led groups right now. They're not only talking to their municipal councilors, but they're also going to be going to the agricultural minister, because they keep on getting flooded out, but yet the next municipality down runs out of water. So it's a problem that needs to be fixed. I'd also encourage everybody to kind of learn if your municipality has any policies, and then kind of your provincial policies as well. Knowing the process before you get into it will help you a lot, and hopefully make that experience a little bit better for you. It is something that I work with a lot of producers on, and that's kind of the area that I focus on, is knowing that information so it's not such a negative process for them. So once again, standardized process so everybody knows what's expected is kind of a process that I hope follows through Western Canada. So unfortunately, my presentation isn't as in depth as Lindsay's, but I kind of come from the ground level of surveying and just getting things done. So thank you everybody for being invited, and open it up for questions.
Great, thank you very much, Kody. Is there any questions for Kody from the audience? Harvey?
In Manitoba, how many, or how is it determined how many landowners have to sign off on downstream runoff?
That must be Harvey that asked that question.
Yeah, I didn't.
All right, sounds familiar. So the way that works in Manitoba is there isn't a specified number. There is no distance. What it is based off of is, say I have tile drainage. I put tile drainage in my field and I have an outlet that goes directly into the municipality's infrastructure. The municipality would be the downstream landowner that would be affected. So that would trigger the permitting officer to require that initial resolution, or it's called a downlander form that you fill out. Now, say that water jumps out of the municipal ditch 200 meters down the ditch and then goes through a natural drain into across a producer's field. There is some debate on this, and that is some of the issues we have in Manitoba. Is in some cases you may need that producer's signatures, but that is actually up to the permitting officer's discretion. So they'll come out and take a look at the site, and they will decide whether that producer is negatively affected or not, especially if it's a natural drainage way. That is the purpose of that drainage way. So there is some room. There is some room to play there. So hopefully that answers your question, Harvey.
Yeah. Okay, we got time for maybe one more question back here.
Kody, knowing what you know now about the Manitoba process of approvals and the process that you have to go through to get such approvals for projects, is there anything that you would change or recommend for change in Manitoba to make things more transparent, more open, and maybe a little bit faster?
Oh, there's many things I would change, but that is well above my pay level. It's not so much that I would change it. I am actually writing policies for municipalities right now, drainage policies for them, in conjunction with them to rewrite it. The thing that I would change is I would make sure the right people are writing policy. The biggest thing that I have learned is just because a policy is written doesn't mean that everybody sitting at that table necessarily fully knew or knows the topic of drainage. I did recently have a meeting with one of my clients where I went through the process with a reeve, and he actually had no idea how to apply for a permit. He had no idea that you actually had to apply to the province if you're to drain your land. That was completely foreign to him, which is a little frightening when they're the ones writing the policies. So it's very important that policies are written from a place of being realistic, understanding what you're writing for, and the complications of how each line, so to speak, or each subtopic affects producers. I'm of the mindset that drainage should not affect anybody. And if it's working well, there should be no affected downland ratepayers. But a lot of times where we get tripped up right now in Manitoba is the municipalities have not kept up with their infrastructure, and that's what causes the issues.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thanks again, Kody, for joining us. Just as a heads up, I'll be getting in touch with you about that Lidar and that portal, because my RN does have some Lidar data and I'd like to make use of it. So thank you again. We'll be in touch, and enjoy the rest of your day. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you for having me, everyone. And if you do have questions, please ask Candace, and I definitely will follow up with anybody if they got more. So thank you very much.